All right. I'm Richard Fraze. I'm one of the faculty co-directors of the Robina Institute. So I'm here to be the first one to welcome you, but several people will. So first, it's my great honor to introduce Kathleen Blatz, who is the chair of the board of the Robina Foundation, a former Chief Justice of the Minnesota Supreme Court, a strong supporter of the Robina Institute. We're so glad that she can be here and kick us off. So, Mrs. Blatz.
Thank you, Professor. Welcome, everybody. An early morning in a beautiful space. I am really, truly happy to be here. I am a very proud member of the Robina Foundation, and I thought in my introductory remarks that I should just introduce Robina a little bit more to you, because it's a name hopefully you will become more and more accustomed to over the years. There was a gentleman, he died in 2004, by the name of James Binger, and Jim Binger he had been the CEO at Honeywell, and he had been a partner at Dorsey and had done other things in his life. He was a philanthropist. But very importantly for our purposes here today, he was a graduate of the Minnesota Law School. And when he died, he left a significant part of his estate to create the Robina Foundation. And what is compelling about the Robina Foundation, and different from other foundations that you may be aware of, is that there were only 4 grantees that he named. And one of those 4 grantees was the University of Minnesota Law School. Lucky, lucky law school, I can tell you that. This is all Jim Binger's idea. And the other 3 grantees were institutes that he had a personal relationship with. He guided the foundation, which the board had not been created, that we were to give all the money away in 20 years or less, and that we were to give it to the 4 grantees that he named, but that not just give it to them. They had to come up with transformative, creative ideas. And the first significant gift in the University of Minnesota was the Robina Institute of Criminal Law and Criminal Justice. We, as board members, became enthralled with the work right off the bat. There were conferences such as this, and board members went to them, and our former board chair, Tom Crosby, who was a managing partner at one time at Faegre, wonderful man, did not have a criminal law background, went to one of those conferences and just came away, almost transformed himself, and said, we've got to do more for this Robina Institute and try to accelerate some of the work that they're doing. We threw another roughly about $4.5 million into it. I think we're all in, just for the Institute, $7.5 million, excuse me. And that was to get the focus on sentencing guidelines, commissions, parole states, the effect of criminal history scores, looking at probation, this is the work that they're doing, looking at probation conditions and the impact of revocations, parole revocations, and what all that means to our criminal justice system. I think the public, wide and large, has some level of perception, some acute, some not so acute, of the fact that America incarcerates, we're second to none in the incarceration business. What I think there's much less understanding about is how people end up in our jails and prisons. I think the public at large believes that if you get arrested, you go to court, you plead guilty, or you have a trial, and then you're sentenced, and you may go to jail or you go to prison. What they don't understand is that a significant percentage of our incarcerated population does not go directly to jail, that they are there because of a probation violation and other reasons. And for the ones that do go to jail directly, the criminal history scores that we have in Minnesota, for example, and in other states across this nation, have an impact on how much time you serve. And I can tell you, as a trial judge now 20 years ago in Hennepin County, I'll never forget one small case where the public defender and the prosecutor brought me a deal that they wanted me to accept. And it was a gentleman who had been out drinking with his buddies, and I would say that they were either homeless or marginally sheltered people. And he had, the defendant had stolen $2 from his drinking buddy on the street corner, and I think threatened that he had a weapon on him, so it was a robbery. And because of his criminal history score, he pled guilty to 3 years in prison for $2. I don't even know if he got the $2. But anyway, that showed me immediately, this was very early on, it was one of the first pleas I took, of what it meant to have a criminal history score. The Robina Institute and the work that they're doing is they're making us look, all of those of us in the system, look at what does it mean to have criminal history scores? How far back are we going? Do they ever get stale? Does it make sense today? What if there was a big gap? All those kind of questions. And they're doing it on all the things that I just ticked off. And so the work is impactful. I believe it's transformative. The wonderful leadership that we do have at the Robina Institute through Professor Fraze, Professor Wrights, and Kelly Mitchell, the executive director, and the team they've put together is wonderful and is making a difference, not just in Minnesota, but across this nation. I've just learned that they were just consulted with by Nevada, who is now setting up, they just passed a law, a sentencing commission, and they'll have their guidelines. So this work is really powerful and important, and I'm just so grateful when I look across this room to see some of you who I know, some new faces, of course, but that you're here and that you care. The criminal justice system does not belong just to those of us who have the privilege, really, to work in it. It belongs to all Minnesotans, and we all have a stake in it. So I hope that you learn something here today, that you give something and help elucidate issues, and that when we all leave here today, that we feel more motivated to change the world, just as Jim Binger anticipated. Thank you, and have a great conference.
Thank you, Justice Blatz, for your kind introduction and for joining us today, and for your support of the Institute over the years. I have to give you some administrative, logistical information about the conference, and then I'll say a couple of words about the themes of the conference, and then introduce our keynote speaker, James Foreman, Jr. There will be a reception at the end, so look at your programs and follow it to the end. We welcome you to join us for that. There is continuing, also in your program, continuing legal education credit. The code number, event code is there, 250328. We always want to get your feedback on how the program went, so there will be a survey that will be sent out electronically, so look in your email for that link. If we thank you for coming here and supporting us in that way, but if you would like to also support us financially, we have information about that in your program. Check or credit card is possible. You can give online, robinainstitute.umn.edu. And one final administrative or logistical matter, we welcome your feedback in this plenary sessions, so we've left time at the end of each of the sessions for a Q&A, and to do that we have 2 microphones that are out there. Oh, okay, one there and one there. So what you do is you line up behind one of those microphones, and whoever is chairing up here will alternate the 2, whoever's in front of the next microphone. So we also, I think, will have one mic in the breakout section rooms, so we'll also have Q&As there. So we very much welcome your questions and your input. All right, so just a couple of words about the theme of the conference. As the program description makes clear, we're not just talking about mass incarceration. That's a term that's become very well known these days, but mass punishment, because all forms of punishment are exceptional in the United States, both relative to other Western countries and relative to our historical past. So one of the reasons we say reversing mass punishment is because we want to call attention to the fact that we have unprecedentedly high rates of incarceration and supervision and collateral consequences relative to who we were and what we did for most of the 20th century. We have, I think, close to, even though prison populations have leveled off and come down a bit in the last few years, we still have, I think, almost 5 times the incarceration rate that we had for 50 years in the middle of the 20th century, before it started shooting up in the 70s. So I think we ought not to just assume, well, this new 5 times higher level, this is per capita. Takes into account population growth, per capita incarceration rates. We shouldn't just assume that's the new normal. That's just the way it is. We should question, why are we putting so many people in cages? Why are we keeping track and putting conditions, so many conditions and consequences on people? So that is, those are the questions we're going to be asking. And a related important theme, which we'll pick up in the keynote and carry all the way through the conference. It's not just mass punishments, mass and unequal punishment, because the people who are incarcerated, the people who are in supervision, are not a random sample of the American public. They are disproportionately people of color, and that has major consequences for them and their families, their communities, and it is a major cause of a basically revolving door of disadvantage. So we want to emphasize that issue. It is one of the issues that the Institute's programs have looked at closely. So if you look at your, I would say that another reason to have a meeting like this right now is times are changing. There seems to be a considerable bipartisan recognition that we went too far in all of these areas of punishment, and that it's not cost effective, it's often counterproductive. So there's reason to hope that we can reverse a lot of this, but we have a lot of work to do. There's a lot of aspects of it. We're going to have sessions, plenaries, and breakouts that address many different aspects of mass punishment, mass and unequal punishment. And it all draws pretty directly on work that we've done at the Institute with the support of the Robina Foundation.